adventure on the podcast series, Adventures in Brain Injury. Today's episode is brought to you by Minnesota Functional Neurology and Chiropractic, found online at mnfunctionalneurology.com. Our shout out of thanks to Dr. Jeremy Schmo and his team for the work they do and for sponsoring this podcast. As well, we would like to thank Dr. Joshua Flowers and his team at Revive Treatment Centers of America, found online at revivecenters.com. And Kevin, you are in Colorado right now.
I'm
at
right
Revive
here,
as we speak.
right now. Yep, right here, right now.
That's
and it's
fabulous.
really cool. Yeah, it's really
Not only have they given you space to improve your brain function, they've given you space to interview today. Isn't that terrific? So I'd also like to ask our dear listeners if they are enjoying these conversations with some of the leading minds in functional neurology and neuro rehab, that perhaps they'd like to toss a loony or a toonie into the tip jar, and they can do that. Our virtual tip jar is patreon.com/AIBI.
Yeah, thank you so much. Also, if you guys could leave us a review on iTunes, that helps us a lot to get this information out to more people. It gets us ranked higher and whatnot. So that would be excellent. And I also wanted to let you know that I am accepting consultations. So you can go to feedabrain.com/consult or adventuresinbraininjury.com/consult.
I'm so glad that you're sharing your knowledge, your tremendous hours and hours over these last number of years of research, and not only through these podcasts, but now consulting. Great move. Thank you, Kevin.
Thank you, Michelle.
Let's get started, hey?
Yeah, let's just jump in. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the 25th Adventure in Brain Injury. My name's Kevin Ballister. I'm a severe traumatic brain injury survivor, creator of adventuresinbraininjury.com, and creator of feedabrain.com. And with me, as always, is my co-host, Michelle Malmberg, severe acquired brain injury survivor, and amazing person who's also the co-host of the Adventures in Brain Injury podcast. How are you doing, Michelle?
Kevin, today's a crazy day. Crazy day.
Yeah. And, do you have crazy eyes while you're doing it? Because I kind of have some crazy eyes going on.
I probably do. I have to say that we're on day 3 of 6 days of celebrating my neighbor's daughter's wedding, and they are an East Indian family. So my life is a paradox. I take such good care of my brain, and this week it's just, to heck with it. Sure, I'll eat this. I'm going to dance to music that is so loud I can't hear myself think. I am going to look at flashing lights on the dance floor, and you know what? It's crazy. I'm feeling actually pretty good.
No, that's what I'm saying. The healthiest thing we can do for our brains, and this is what I say about the Feed a Brain book. The line is, this book is not about being dogmatic forever. This is about learning how food affects your unique physiology and how those reactions affect your brain.
Well,
after all, the healthiest thing we can do is to enjoy our lives and to do so sustainably. Exactly. And that's exactly what you're doing. Enjoy your life, So, and when I was talking about crazy eyes, like really, right now I'm at Revive Treatment Centers and they're spinning me around in the gyroscope and doing all these experiments, and then they stop. All right, shake, do a couple no-nos and look at that. So I'm supposed to shake my head back and forth, and then like, all right, how you doing? And I'm like, I bet you my eyes are like those cartoons where one's spinning one way and the other's the other way. Yeah.
We have someone who can help you with that today.
So I'm told. Yes. Tell me about Dr. Robert Sanet.
Oh, with pleasure. Our adventurous guest today is Dr. Robert Sanet, a world-renowned educator and practitioner in the fields of behavioral optometric care, vision training, and practice management. So he had me at the behavioral optometric care. Boy, was my interest ever piqued. He has lectured extensively in the United States and internationally. Dr. Sanet is the owner and director of the San Diego Center for Vision Care, the director of Insight Vision Center, clinical director for international events of the Special Olympics Opening Eyes program. And trust me, I have clipped this little bio because we could go on for quite some time. But I do think it's important to mention he's the staff optometrist at San Diego Rehabilitation Institute at Alvarado Hospital, a consultant to vision centers in Europe. Dr. Sanet has worked with amateur and professional athletes in volleyball, football, baseball, golf. He's on the board of directors of the Optometric Rehabilitation Association, an association
I'm a fan
which
of those guys.
Kevin, yes, has a particular fondness. I did put that in there. And he is a professor at a number of optometry colleges in the good old US of A, as well as the president and a fellow of the College of Optometrists and Vision Development. Now, I also have to say he is so heavily laden with international awards that I picked one, and he was named as a distinguished practitioner in the multidisciplinary National Academies of Practice, and he's one of only 100 optometrists in the US of A to have received this award. So I thought that was notable. And what has been said about Dr. Sanet? Well, he's one of the most influential leaders in behavioral optometry globally, whose educational and instructional seminars are recognized as the industry gold standard. So, Kevin, we caught ourselves a big fish from this pond.
No doubt. When I met Dr. Sanet, it was at Nora, and we'll talk about that. But welcome, Dr. Sanet. It is such a pleasure to have you here.
Thank you very much, and thank you very much, Michelle, for that introduction.
You're welcome.
You can't see me now, but I'm blushing. I do need to make one correction, though.
Please, yes.
I'm a big fish, but I'm a big, old, smelly fish, because most of those things need to have past in front of them. So I'm past president of COVD. I'm past director of the Insight Vision Center. I'm past director. So just put past in front of everything, and then everything was correct.
So you have passed
right
the torch.
now I'm full-time teaching. I don't do much else. Teach, garden.
Mm-hmm.
Well, then that makes me see you as more human, because I sometimes look at all the accomplishments of our beautiful, wonderful, talented guests and think, oh my gosh. And then there's, a blush of inadequacy that comes over me, thinking, how may I contribute as substantially to this world as people like you? So I'm so glad that you are training the next generation. Thank you.
That's exactly right.
Well, Michelle, there's hope for you. When you're bald and have a gray beard, maybe you'll be where I am.
Do you promise?
Oh, wow.
My gosh.
Well, yeah. So when I first met Dr. Sanet, it was actually at the Neuroplasticity Rehabilitation Association annual conference back in, 2013, 2014, maybe?
Yeah, you've been a couple of those.
Yeah. He understands neuroplasticity and vision in a way that very few do, and it is a blessing that he teaches as well. But Dr. Sanet told me a bit about his story that led him to this type of vision care, of neurooptometry. And could you tell us that story again?
Sure. I'll actually have to go back a little bit.
The beginning, yes, please.
Well, when I was growing up, I was in special classes for kids who just didn't fit, and kids who had learning problems and behavior problems, all the way through high school. I graduated high school, having been in special classes since fifth grade. I was labeled a nice kid, but not too bright. And then I was accepted into college, not because of my grades, but because at that particular time during the 60s, there was programs called open enrollment at colleges. One of the colleges was Hofstra University, where I went, that had open enrollment for anybody who wanted to go. So I was accepted into college. I then had a 1.6 my first semester, a 1.9 my second semester. I was on academic probation. I probably would have flunked out. Between my first and second year, I was in a very, very serious automobile accident, which caused massive head trauma. I broke all of the bones in my head.
All of the bones?
Every single one. I had blowout.
What year was that?
That was in 1966.
Wow.
I had blowout fractures of both orbits. I lost a stereo rectus in one eye. I had a huge hole in my frontal brain. So actually, the photographs taken, you could actually look at my brain.
Oh, wow.
You and Phineas Gage.
It was.
Yeah, right.
It was open.
Oh, geez, Dr. Sanet.
Yeah, they.
You've never shared those pictures with me.
Those pictures are hidden away in a drawer somewhere. I don't. And they did some. I lost some of my frontal lobe. They took some more glass and bone out of my frontal lobe, put me back together again. I had more than 500 external stitches on my head. I had pins and wires sticking out from everywhere, really plates, and. They told my parents to go to the cemetery to make plans to bury me because there was no chance I was going to live. That lasted for 14 days, where I just every day they thought I wasn't going to make it. Finally, after 14 days, they were relatively sure I was going to live, and but they told my parents I would probably be a vegetable with. And have very little personality because I basically gave myself a frontal lobotomy.
Oh gosh! Oh my gosh!
They were wrong on most of those counts. So here I am. So that's the original story.
Wow.
The next 2 years in and out of the hospital, having 20 reconstructive surgeries on my head to put my head back together again, so it looked relatively normal.
That's like real deal Humpty Dumpty.
Yes.
All the king's horses and all the king's men. My God.
Yeah, so that's my story. So that was when I was between 20 and 22 years of age, basically. It happened just before my 20th birthday.
Oh, wow. Oh, Dr. Sanet, I'm a little speechless here.
Yeah. I was 6 feet tall, and when I got out of the hospital, I weighed 116 pounds.
Wow.
Good heavens.
Yeah,
good
so
heavens.
I was not in good shape in those days, but little by little, I went back to college. I graduated college with an amazingly impressive 2.02 GPA. I applied to a lot of optometry schools. I got rejected at all of them on the East Coast where I wanted to go to school. Then I applied to a school in California who had more openings than students. So there were two spots open. I got one of the last two spots, and I started optometry school in 1970.
Wow.
So that's the beginning of my story. I was not doing too well at optometry school, and through a series of events was led to behavioral optometry and vision training, and that changed my life.
It changed many people's lives.
So how did you went to optometry school and you were steered towards behavioral and developmental optometry?
No, not exactly, Kevin. I was taking the normal courses of anatomy and physiology and neurology and really not doing very well in most of those courses. But fortunately, I went to a seminar that was free. One person spoke on contact lenses. Another doctor by the name of Donald Getz from the Los Angeles area, spoke about something that I really didn't know much about because they weren't teaching it in school very much, and that was optometric vision therapy. When I heard him speak, I said, that's what I want to do.
Wow.
And about 4 or 5 months later, I began vision therapy actually in a different optometrist's office. And that absolutely changed my life.
So you began as a patient or as a student clinician?
Both, actually. It's an interesting story. Oh, something I didn't mention. When I got out of the hospital, I had constant double vision.
Okay.
And I had constant double vision for 5 years. From the time of the accident to the time I entered into vision therapy. That was helped with some prism lenses. There were 16 diopters of vertical prism that I wore to help function.
16. Yeah. I was going to say double vision. Well, that makes 2 of us.
Yeah, exactly.
And you're not seeing double with that. Me and you, baby.
Exactly.
So 16. See, I was at a 9 diopter prism when I was first assessed. Yeah, and I've been able to bring it down to a 4 or 5.
Right. That's wonderful. We can speak about that a little bit more. Maybe
we will.
So anyway, I went to this doctor. His name was Dr. Ralph Schrock. Michelle, you asked me, or maybe it was you, Kevin, about being a student clinician. I think it was you, Michelle.
Yes.
So what I used to do, now it's okay because I don't think they can take away my license, but I used to have someone sign me in as if I was in school. I used to get in the car, drive 2.5 hours one way to see this particular optometrist because he was the one I wanted vision therapy from. So I was in northern Los Angeles. I used to drive to the southern part of San Diego.
Oh, gosh.
I used to get up, drive. It was about 2.5 or 3 hours. I used to go have a vision training session. Then I'd work as a student clinician in his office. Then I'd have another vision training session with myself. Then I'd see some of his patients as a student clinician. Then I would have a third vision training visit for myself and work with some more of his patients. Then we would go out to dinner. I would sleep over his house. And then early the next morning, I would get up and make the 3-hour drive back to optometry school and classes. And I did that for 9 to 10 months. 2 things happened, which were pretty remarkable for me. First, my prism went down from 16 to 2.
Wow.
And with some vision training afterwards, it went from 2 to 0, but 2 to 0 actually took me 2 more years of home therapy before I could get 2 to 0. But 16 to 2 was during that 9 to 10 month period. But the more amazing thing for me was not getting rid of the prism, but I could read for the first time in my life for extended periods of time with good concentration, good comprehension. I went from being at the bottom of the class to being on the honor roll. My life changed dramatically with the ability to read for long periods of time with good comprehension. So
this is phenomenal.
That was a more life-changing thing. If I had to choose, I'd still be wearing 16 diopters of vertical prism and being able to read. But what I got was both. And for after I got to 0, I've been at 0 for the last 40 years, 45 years.
Wow.
You know, I talk about how we find the gifts in our injuries. You know, same with me. I share a similar story with you. Like I struggled in school. I wasn't as low as you were. Like I took shortcuts and figured out how to read the Cliff Notes and things.
My favorite books.
Favorite books, Cliff Notes, right? And just it's funny. I was talking to somebody who was telling me about how their kid won't even cheat. He's like, Cliff Notes, that's a whole That's a whole like 10, 20 pages. I'm not reading that.
Oh,
It's pretty ridiculous.
I had a hard
But what that means,
notes.
I know, and that's what I'm saying. Like the vision therapy and the gifts that we get from our injury, and it's like, oh, you're clearly damaged now. Let's fix that. And it's like, whoa, I was damaged before too.
exactly.
And this just fixed me beyond what I thought was even possible. You know, a lot of people are told like that they're just lazy or it's or something like that, you know, and they're stupid and they're unable to get it. And it's just like, it's not something for you. But it's amazing how sometimes it's simply your ability to read and do so, your visual system, and it's the eye and the brain connection that we talk about and that you are master of. So
yeah, it's remarkable.
It really is.
Thing about my injury, the worst thing that ever happened to me in my life was my accident and my injury. The best thing that ever happened to me in my life was my accident and my injury.
Wow.
I love
and
that.
I have to ask you, Dr. Sanet, how long did it take you to come to that place of gratitude, that realization and gratitude that the worst thing that happened to you was the best thing that happened to you?
I don't know exactly when that occurred, but for certainly it was somewhere between 6 and 10 years after. I mean, it took me a long time to come to that. I couldn't define myself for a long time with anything but my injury. So, you know, when I went out with my wife, now wife, then first date, you know, all I did was talk about my injury. When I met somebody new, all I did was talk about my injury. Everything was around my injury. There was sort of nothing else in my life, and I kept coming back to that as somehow I was my injury rather than I survived my injury.
Do you think that was processing for you, or were you caught in a victim trap?
I think both were true. For sure, I was caught in a victim trap. I mean, I was 19 years old. I was working as a bartender in a discotheque. When I was injured, I was, enjoying a 19-year-old life, if you can imagine, as a bartender in a discotheque.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And then, I woke up and there I was without my life and actually without my face in terms of looking in the mirror. I mean, that was one of the more remarkable things in my life. I looked in the mirror and I didn't know who was looking back at me. Not that it was just horrible, but I mean, even if you look in the mirror and you wake up and you look like, Brad Pitt or, Angelina Jolie, it's just this disbelief that you literally, it's like you see in the movies, like when you look in a mirror and you don't know who is looking back at you.
Right.
And that was remarkable for me. So I really, again, as the worst thing in my life, lost everything, including myself.
Yes, sure.
And on the other side, the best thing was because I wasn't so wonderful, I don't think, before, I lost a lot of myself as well and had to find a new self because the old self was gone.
Yes.
So it was actually an opportunity. It was an open door either to, just stay there and feel bad for myself or to walk through and begin the process of healing. But it took me a long time. I'm not one of these people who it was, as quick even as Kevin, where it might have been a few years after. I mean, it took me certainly closer to 10, probably even to 5 years before I could really appreciate that there was a gift part of it.
Yes.
I could appreciate that I was better. I could appreciate that I was doing things, but I never saw it as a gift, maybe about 10 years. And then I started to, and as I get older and older, I realized what a gift it was. It gave me my profession. It gave me my wife. It gave me my career. It gave me the ability to give back to the world, to contribute in some positive way. So it's been a remarkable ride for the last 50 years since my accident.
It gave you a vision.
So much to say about everything you just talked about. You were saying about how for a while it was like you talked about your brain injury, you talked about your accident, and that was the main thing. And and going back through it, what Michelle said with processing it or dwelling on it, it's like an analogy I use about the garden. Your brain is your garden, and I use this to describe neuroscience. You have 86 billion plants in your garden, 86 billion neurons in your brain. And your thoughts are the seeds, and your attention is the sunlight and water. And we all have weeds in our garden. We all have, terrible things that happen to us, things that we need to go through, or that we've been through, and that are just rough. And we also have bad habits and all of this stuff, right? We all know what weeds are. And if we give our attention to there's no way to pull the weeds without brain surgery or injury. And there's no surgeon skilled enough, no injury specific enough. But what we can do is we can give our attention to the flowers. And after a while, those roots overtake the weeds. But there's a little bit of like, so don't look at the weeds, like put those away. And I'm like, no, because sometimes we need to go back and we need to find the tools, find what's useful in there. Among those weeds, there are flowers often. And going back, coming from my own experience, going back on the year anniversary of my brain injury and writing about where I was 1 year ago. So I wrote about what I was told happened after when I fell. And then later on, I wrote about when they tried to extubate me, and it was a failed extubation. My involuntary reaction was to bite down on the tube that supplied me with oxygen, and then I lost all oxygen to my brain. My blood oxysaturated. I had a hypoxic stroke, basically. I wrote about that, and on. I wrote about the first time I walked and all that. So the point of all of that is I went back through, and it's like you say, processing, but finding the flowers in there. And on my 2-year post, I said, my brain injury does not define me, but it's a part of my story. And that's what's really important is not letting it define you anymore. And also throughout not wallowing, like you talked about, because wallowing doesn't get you anywhere. and recognizing and accepting. I talk about how accepting is not giving up and being like, it's just like this. There's no need to try because this is the way it's going to be. This is my new normal. All of that. Like, no. Accepting is recognizing that right now in this moment, you can't change your circumstance. But what you do in this moment can change the future. And so then you move forward with that. And then I love the contribution aspect as well. Coming back and finding a way that you can contribute and find a purpose in what you're doing. And that's exactly what you're doing and have been doing for decades. And I just thank you so much, Dr. Sanet, and you are a role model and an inspiration.
Thank you very much for your words, Kevin. I'm very impressed. One of the things I was impressed, I guess it's going to be a love fest now, but you came to it so much younger than I did in terms of finding a direction, and you're so much better speaker than I was at your age. It took me a long time to come to speak and to teach and to share. So you are also an inspiration to me, and should be to all of people who survive brain injury. It's really remarkable.
That's right. You saw me speak for the first time.
Yeah, and it was remarkable.
Thank you so much. I mean, that means so much.
That's the best thing I can say. It's memorable. Heard hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of speeches.
Yes, of course.
There might be 10 that stick out in my mind over the last 40 years, and yours is one of them.
Congratulations, Kevin.
Thank you so much, Dr. Sanet.
It was remarkable.
Yay.
It's nice. There is hope. I guess that's one of the things that I'm hoping that the show does, both with your story, my story, and I'm sure you have a story as well, Michelle, that, there is hope for people with brain injuries.
Yes. Well, and it is a long journey, and I think what I really want to just distill from your story and Kevin's is that it isn't always overnight that we come to this realization, and we do have to process and we do explore the weeds. And there's a lot to learn from weeds, because weeds can be very fast growing. And I think that we should figure out how to capture that ability to morph to the environment and take what we can to become such strong and able, fast growing weeds, and then use that to blossom. But it's could I just redirect this love fest to our behavioral optometry?
Yeah, we fell into that.
Sure. Can I just there's just a couple of things I'd like to comment on.
Yes, of course.
That's more recent. One is that there was a time for me, I don't know that there's a time for everybody, there's a time for me, that there were only weeds. There were no flowers.
Yes.
Just any. But the seeds were in there somewhere dormant, waiting for the rain. Like flowers in the desert wait, years sometimes to bloom for that rain. So at times it isn't always flowers and weeds. There are times when there are just no flowers. One other image I'd like to bring into this, the doctor in the Chicago area, he's a behavioral optometrist. He's a really also world-renowned behavioral optometrist. And he has very serious physical problems caused by a back injury. His wife is almost totally blind from diabetic retinopathy. Yet they sail and they kayak. She is the main physical part of the team. He is the visual part of the team. And together they pretty much every weekend sail and kayak all around Lake Michigan.
That's amazing.
And he has a way of being, I guess, or a way of thinking that I think is worth sharing. What he does is he says, I take the bad things in my life and the difficulties on a daily basis and globally, and actually mentally try to make them very, very, very small. And I visualize the good things becoming bigger and bigger and bigger, like a balloon. And both of them are happy, well-adjusted contributors to the world and get a lot of pleasure out of life because they tend to minimize the small stuff and maximize the good stuff.
Carl Jung talked about people like that. He said, I am not what happened to me. I am what I choose to become. And they are living proof.
Exactly. That's a very good quote. I'm going to use that quote from Jung.
Yeah, that's very inspiring. Thank you for sharing that, Dr. Sanet.
You're welcome.
Could we go into this behavioral optometry, because going through prepping for this interview, there were so many aspects that crossed over, and started to realize, looking through your work, that after a brain injury, regaining brain function and redeveloping one's visual capacity is similar to the stages seen in the developmental milestones observed in infancy and early childhood. And you go on to talk about primitive reflexes, and it really looks like we're starting over, like much like you did after your tragic accident. You started again.
When we're rehabilitating the brain, we're redeveloping the brain. That's what I talk about.
Exactly.
Probably learned that from Dr. Sanet.
My particular area of expertise, you spoke about primitive reflexes, which are part, or motor training, which is part, certainly vestibular training is part. I'm not an expert in any of those areas, although I do incorporate some of those areas into my vision, overall vision training program.
Okay.
But basically, the main thrust is to work on the brain through the visual system, not looking just at visual acuity, how clearly we see, but how efficiently we take in and process visual information. More of the brain is devoted to the processing of visual information than all of the other sensory systems combined. So if you took auditory and vestibular and tactile proprioceptive and smell and taste, and you put them all together, they would be less than half of the brain area that's devoted to vision. So we have visual brains, and one of the most effective ways to get into the brain, in my opinion, the most effective way, is through working on vision, because so much of the brain is devoted to vision. We have visual processing in every single lobe of the brain: frontal lobe, parietal lobe, temporal lobe, occipital lobe. We also have visual processing in midbrain, brainstem, cerebellum. It's just an amazing, amazing process. I mean, just to look from one place in space to another area of space takes 16 different brain areas are affected.
Wow.
Just make an eye movement called a saccade from one point to the other. So when we have accurate saccades, we are actually working on retraining brainstem and midbrain and parietal lobe and occipital lobe and frontal lobe, just by doing eye movement training.
Unbelievable, just truly unbelievable. You know, and oh my gosh, oh, Dr. Sanet, my neurons are firing.
when we interviewed Dr. Shidlovsky, we talked about this as well. I mean, the visual system it touches every area of the brain.
Yes.
And
yes.
I love you reiterating that.
To touch the brain. One of the quotes I have is, it's difficult to touch the brain and not touch anywhere and not touch vision.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And so this led you to develop the SVI, or the Sanet Vision Integrator for.
Yes.
So will you tell us about this program?
That's an interesting story as well. There's a gentleman, his name is Rod Bortel, who produces vision training instruments, and they're all computer-based in some way. I was not only computer illiterate, but I was computer phobic. I didn't like the whole technology. I didn't use it in my office when I was practicing. And every time I would see him at an optometric meeting and he would be demonstrating a new product, I would sort of, look the other way, and he'd say, Bob, come on over here, let's speak. And I'd be like, yeah, I'll be back. I'll be back in an hour, and I never come back because I really wasn't interested in what he was selling. Then about 5 years ago, I was ill again. I had a leak of cerebrospinal fluid from my brain. And I was housebound. There was a choice of two major surgeries they were going to do. One was just incredibly invasive, and then there was another doctor who was going to try a much more measured approach. I went with the more measured approach. Fortunately, it was successful, but during the recuperation period, I was housebound. I wasn't driving. I wasn't doing much. And Rod Borsell, the owner, called me up again and said, how would you like to be involved with the project, blah, blah, blah. I said, I'm really not interested. He said, well, let me send you the stuff. I'll send you a touchscreen TV, and I'll send you a prototype of an idea, and I'd like you to start putting stuff together. So he would send me something, I would give my opinion, and I got hooked, and I started developing programs. And over the next 6 months, we developed this instrument that works on a significant number of visual functions to enhance eye movements and focusing and eye coordination and hand-eye coordination and vestibular work. And put everything together in a touchscreen format.
Yeah, well, I'm so interested in these lectures that you
Yes.
are delivering, and I mean these comprehensive lectures. Right now, you're lecturing out of San Diego. You're in the midst of a comprehensive 5-module seminar over the course of this year. Another year of comprehensive module seminars, and so I'm really curious about, okay, so we understand that with all of these visual receptors throughout the brain, I can comprehend that the eye input, visual input, is incredibly important. So would you kindly explain how a vision therapist can promote this high-level thinking through vision therapy procedures? Like, how does this change the way we think and change the behavior that a child or an adult might elicit?
Sure. First, interestingly, you mentioned Dr. Shidlovsky. He happens to be in this year's course.
Oh, great.
So
Nice.
And it's just a great, great practitioner in Texas. I wouldn't hesitate to refer anybody to him. Because so much of the brain is involved with the taking in and processing of information, and also with directing action, vision has to direct the majority of that motor action of our bodies. And when vision is efficient, then we have efficient motor output. When we don't, then things become much more difficult, like reading. And again, just moving the eye from one place to the other is a motor output. So from just jumping our eyes from one place to another, to driving a car, to hitting a tennis ball, to doing all of the things in life, develop as we grow and we learn. Some people learn it very well. Some people, even without brain injury, don't learn those skills very well, so that reading may be difficult for them or sports may be difficult for them. And for both groups, so the group that never developed well, and especially for the group that had these skills, they may be lost after a brain injury.
Sure.
Kevin may have had, I didn't know Kevin before his injury, but I know he played the guitar. He might have been good in sports. He might have been very athletic. But after his injury, he not only had motor issues, but he had problems with vision telling his body what to do accurately. So that could affect his balance, that could affect his driving, that could affect his reading, that could affect all kinds of things. And vision therapy is aimed at reestablishing those connections after a brain injury so people can function more efficiently in life.
Okay, and so then let me take this back, please, to, for example, you said all your life you struggled in school and with reading. And so if we look at the behavioral aspect, so children who are dealing with these difficulties are then more likely to act out and not develop socially as well as someone with better vision?
No question.
Really?
Again, I was one of those people. It may sound like an exaggeration, but it's not at all. There was more likelihood that I would be in prison now than speaking to you if I didn't have optometric vision therapy.
No kidding.
That is quite a quote.
Big statement.
Endorsement.
Big statement.
I had lots and lots and lots of behavioral issues. that were secondary. It's not the vision. My poor vision caused that. My poor vision caused me to have difficulty with reading, with academic achievement. As with Kevin, I was called lazy. I didn't try. I wasn't too smart. So I wasn't that great in sports. I was okay, but not great. So I really didn't have any area of my life that was meaningful in a big way. And I wanted to contribute to the world, and even when I was young. And I didn't see a way to do that. And I didn't see a way to interact with peers, except the peers that were also getting in trouble like I was, and were out of the the honor society people and the good kids and the star athletes and all of those kids. So I was a kid who did not have a good self-image, and then until my accident, and after my accident, my self-image was even worse. I had no idea what I was going to do, but I was, like I say, I was a bartender and having a great old time, but with really no dreams for the future, no ideas that things would be better, no ideas that. Well, I couldn't read well. I mean, if you don't read well, life is tough.
So when I take a look at the population in schools now, Dr. Sanet, we have a number of children who are dealing with the autism spectrum disorder diagnoses, with ADHD, these types of labels that are put on these children. And so it sounds to me like there's so much more we could be doing to help these children.
About 20% of children who are struggling in school have significant visual problems. And a high percentage of children who are labeled as ADHD, who are on medication, it's really secondary to a visual problem. And what I found was that with a number of those children, once we corrected their visual problems, their attention improved dramatically, and many of them no longer needed the medication. So I strongly advise that everybody listening to this group, whether it's a mom of a child with a learning problem or an adult with a learning problem or someone post-traumatic brain injury, have a comprehensive evaluation from a good behavioral optometrist.
Okay, so where do we find these behavioral optometrists? Because
the very first place I would look is on a website called covd.org.
Okay.
Optometrists in Vision Development. And I would look first for a certified fellow in that group. These are people who have passed oral and written examinations for competence in this area. The second place I'd look at a group called Neuroplasticity Rehabilitation Association. That's where Kevin spoke for the first time. It's a great group. Their website is nora.cc, Neuroplasticity Rehabilitation Association. And for those of you in Texas, I'll give a plug. Shidlovsky would be
Shidlovsky.
Yeah, he was such a dear man to speak with, and very clearly so patient.
Somebody who would help with both, but there are practitioners all over the United States.
I want to bring up one thing. In your seminars, vision therapy includes functional neurology and neurophysiology of the brain, and me and Michelle are both so pleased about that and how you're incorporating functional neurology. I'm at Revive Centers in Colorado, which is where Dr. Shidlovsky was not too long ago. And actually, Lynn Hellerstein, I had her come in yesterday.
And Dr. Hellerstein is spectacular. Actually,
absolutely.
Colorado is one of the premier states, either the first or second state in the United States, I would say, for behavioral optometry. It's a great group there.
Yes. So if you're in Colorado, Lynn Hellerstein, who we interviewed, and if you're in Texas, Dr. Shidlovsky, who we interviewed as well.
But in California, there's a ton of good people as well. I'm retired from private practice, so But I'd be happy to make available to anybody who contacted you a list of people who would be in their area who might be able to be helpful. Or, again, the best place to do is just go to COVD and look there, and Nora CC and look there. There's a third organization, which is a very good organization called OEP. And their website is, that they're called the Optometric Extension Program Foundation.
Oh, okay.
And they are oepf.org. All three of them have lots of resources on their websites as well, articles and research studies.
And is there, just to throw in a technology curveball, is there anything online other than the three sites you mentioned, COVC, NORA, OEPF, that people could look for?
Yeah, like everything else, anytime there's something good, people try to commercialize it with these programs, do it yourself, VT at home types of things.
Sure, okay.
I would really recommend that people do not go there first. Some of those programs could be an adjunct to good in-office VT, but you're really doing yourself or your child a disservice by trying to get a quick fix on the internet, thinking that somehow replaces quality care. I mean, Kevin is traveling all the way to Colorado for this specialized therapy. I'm sure somewhere on the internet you could find some vestibular, a $4.95 app for vestibular stuff.
Right.
But it doesn't at all place what Kevin is getting from having an expert in the field work with, quality instrumentation. I'm a person who believes a lot in self-help and also in the things that Kevin does, nutrition and feeding the brain and all kinds of things.
Yes.
But I think we need some guidance in those areas. I don't think that just, looking at the vitamin of the month on, the website.
I think you made a great point there. I think it's really important to recognize that there are experts out there that can really help you and can take your knowledge of what you've learned about your particular condition and help to guide you in ways using their expertise and working as a team on things. So thank you so much, Dr. Sanet. This has been phenomenal. The understanding of your story and what brought you into this and finding purpose and finding a way to contribute and just how you're now teaching other optometrists what you've learned through experience, through rebuilding your brain. And it is absolutely incredible. And I want to thank you again, man.
You're very welcome. It's been a pleasure, and it's been a pleasure speaking to you as well, Michelle. And I hope we do get a chance to meet face to face sometime.
Yes. Well, I look forward to growing my gray beard and wisdom. We will have a great conversation, hopefully before then too.
Thank you both so much, and thanks for what you're doing for the brain injury community. It's a great service.
Thank you for contributing to that. We couldn't do it without people like you.
Thank you. Take good care. Be well.
That's the truth.
And, hopefully we will speak again soon.
Indeed.
All right.
Thank you, Dr. Sanet.
You're very welcome. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Dr. Sanet mentioned how important it was to have a qualified practitioner assess and direct treatment. And I have to second that, and I know you will second and third and fourth that comment, simply because the functional neurology is so powerful. And these eye treatments that I was doing, I have to say that I was actually overdoing them. I overstimulated my brain. And this was under a practitioner's guidance, and it caused such severe overstimulation. It took me months to recover. So finding that sweet spot, as is so popular these days, that term, to focus on, to develop, or to walk away from. And I have to say that when I do go to my functional neurology appointments, there are some elements that we address and then we have to unaddress. Like we'll overwork some aspect of treatment, and then we have to go back and balance. There is no way I could have figured that out on my own or from an internet YouTube video. So Dr. Sanet has a very good point about really taking the time and the effort to source a qualified practitioner.
That's absolutely right. I mean, we talked about, well, what I talk about a lot is there is negative and positive plasticity, right?
Absolutely.
And when we learn how to do something the wrong way, we get really good at doing something the wrong way.
Yes.
And then now if we're going to do it the right way, not only do we need to learn how to do it the right way, we need to unlearn how to do it the wrong way.
Yes.
So it's way more work for us. And
It
so
is.
we need to, so having a practitioner who can guide us to learn in the right way is so important. And that's exactly what functional neurologists do, what these neurooptometrists are doing, and why I'm so adamant about these therapies and support them so much, because they are extremely skilled in what they do.
Yes.
So, Michelle, we could talk for a long time. In fact, we might be due to just do an interview with me and you where we just shoot the breeze. There you go. All right. Yeah. Well, thank you guys so much.
If you found it exciting.
If you found it exciting.
Drop a loony or a toonie in our our little tip jar on patreon.com/AIBI. And help support our pre and post podcast costs, the editing and website technologies that allow this information to get out to the world.
Yeah, and Michelle, I get to see you soon. How cool is that? I wanted to talk about that a little bit. I'm heading to Calgary, which is amazing. And we're gonna be hanging out in real life, which will be fantastic.
Meeting for the very first time,
and meeting a very amazing hero of mine.
Well, and mine too. Yes. Yeah. We're going. You're going.
I don't know if we can spoil it yet. No, let's not spill the beans. We'll talk about it soon. No.
Yeah, it's going to be very exciting. And I look forward to seeing you. I'm still in a state of disbelief. This has all happened so quickly that I'm in the processing mode. I'm still processing what's unfolding as our Canadian school year comes to an end here, and all of these plans come together. So it's exciting, lots of changes, and I think this is going to lead to a really exciting avenue of discussion on the Adventures in Brain Injury podcast, because we're starting to really expand our realm of healing and incorporating so many other not really modalities, just opportunities. So I'm just going to leave it at that. Yes.
Leave it right there. Yeah, we are on quite an adventure, Michelle.
I know.
Quite an adventure in brain injury. So thank you guys so much. You can find this podcast and other podcasts like it on any of the podcast apps, or iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play. If you'd like to schedule a consultation with me, you can do so at feedyourbrain.com/consult. And what else do I got? Can you think of anything else?
Nah, we'll catch you next time.
We'll catch you next time. Thanks, guys.
Care. Bye for now.
Someone take me to a doctor. Just take away this curse. Someone take me to a doctor.